Hello again, everybody. My name is Keith Mintzer. My partner in crime, David McClean. Welcome to MSP Insights. Today we have an interesting topic to go over, Dave.
Thank you, Keith, for the introduction. Everybody, thank you for coming back to the channel and joining us again. And I was hoping maybe you could start off by giving us 3 to 5 best practices when it comes to onboarding new sellers.
Absolutely. Number one, you got to start with a person who has a competitive mindset. Competitive mindset doesn't mean they played professional sports or college sports in the past as much as it is a person who is committed to personal improvement. And personal improvement is something that needs to occur on a day in and day out basis, right? So ultimately, the type of individual that is competing with themselves to get better. So that's number one. Number two, once you bring them on board, before you concern yourself with how to sell the solution, whatever the solution may be, it's important that they first understand the marketplace, who the targeted prospect is that converts to a customer, what are some of the general pain points, what's going on in the vertical market if you're targeting a vertical market, or if you're looking at the IT segment in general, what are some of the pain points that they're considering? Understanding the customer or prospect profile first, I think, is paramount to be able to onboard them effectively. Number three, have a defined sales process, right? And the sales process has to be a multi-step approach to building funnel, pipeline, and ultimately forecast.
What's a reasonable goal for a new seller for 90 days, 6 months, and a year look like to you?
I think the general mistake that folks make when hiring on new reps is to expect a mature funnel quickly. The reality is that it is a year process before you could have a predictable, robust pipeline, funnel, and ultimately a forecast. So after 90 days, what we expect to see is at least a funnel of new business opportunities. And that could be 3 or 4 prospective clients that have been qualified to need budget and that you're speaking to the right people and that there's a timeline that's 3 to 6 months out. So if the opportunities are 3 to 6 months out that you've established over the first 90 days, that really means that true revenue will be coming in somewhere between month 6 and month 9. So MSPs, solution providers need to be prepared to provide support for the first 9 to 12 months. Now, the thing about it is that after 90 days, if the cupboard is bare and the rep has no revenue or no forecast to present or funnel, at the very least, pipeline, then you may have hired the wrong person. It's also reflective on the need for better training as well.
So then what would you expect from someone who's in that role after a year?
I would expect that the person has a pipeline that is 50% greater than their expected quota. And the reason is that there's a likelihood that a third to two-thirds of what's in their pipeline may fall out for a variety of reasons. So that means that the pipeline has to far exceed what the revenue profit quota objective may be.
What we've experienced over the past 2 years when it comes to Fast Start Go is that when people implement an onboarding process for new hires and new sellers, for them to reach that goal after a year is much higher than just hiring someone and not giving them a ramp up time and helping them on board properly. Which leads me to my next question, which is I know you've been working with solution providers and MSPs for the past 20 years. You've hired over 500 reps. What would be your best advice to someone who owns MSP or who runs a solution provider organization and is looking to ramp up with new reps?
Patience and good training. Also, a clear understanding of what the target looks like. So, who's the ultimate prospect who becomes converted to a customer?
I agree with you 100%. One of the experiences that I had early on in my career, a lot of management didn't have any patience for new hires. They were very quick to churn new hires in and out. And I think people started realizing that's very expensive. It's better to invest in making sure that the new hires that you like are successful.
I think our approach to prospecting, Dave, back 20 to 25 years ago was very transactional. And people picked up the phone, they engaged, and you could almost measure success by the number of calls that the individual made. They would get a high contact rate, speak to people, and get a next step call to action that would ultimately lead to revenue. Today, as a result of a variety of behavioral changes in the B2B world, people are picking up the phone or answering the phone less, responding to fewer emails, which really requires a more strategic approach to who you're targeting, and also recognizing the fact that it could take anywhere from 10 to 15 touch points with a target before you actually engage with them. So therefore, by definition, it's going to be a 3 to 6 month process before you get to enough folks where you could build a robust pipeline.
Is there one word that would summarize a mistake that MSPs and VARs make when hiring new sellers?
2 words, Dave: unreasonable expectations.
Which goes back to what you and I experienced when we were early in our careers, not
Correct.
having the patience to get people up to speed and train them properly. And I know that Fast Start Go has a couple different processes in place, but I was hoping maybe you could touch on the quantitative milestones that we use.
Dave, oftentimes when looking at the commonly adopted sales processes for IT, we'll see a 6 or 7 step process. The assumption is that you're already engaged with a prospective client and are having some type of conversation and even some background on the prospect's environment. In the real world, particularly in calling on the SMB or the mid market, oftentimes the new rep has no understanding of what's in the prospect's account or the prospect's environment, other than whatever anecdotal information they could get from a variety of lead or list management sources. In the world that the SDR lives in today, they're starting out with very little information, maybe some installed base data, but no engagement yet with the suspect. So what Fast Start Go does is, instead of having a 6 or 7 step process, we offer a 10 step process. And the first 3 steps that we call 10%, 20%, 30% is really all about getting in front of the target, setting a meeting, and ultimately leaving the meeting with qualified interest. Qualified interest leads to the pipeline, because once you can convert them based upon budget, timeline, need, and authority, they're then qualified in some ways. And then you could start the traditional 7 step sales pipeline development process.
Do new SCRs know what a qualified lead actually is or qualified prospect is?
Not without giving them the necessary training. And that's what we do at Fast Start Go, is to be able to, number one, teach them what a qualified opportunity is, what to look for, what are the questions to ask to open up the conversation into something that leads to a qualified opportunity and ultimately a sale.
So what you're saying is the SDR needs to understand what a functional need is for it to be a qualified lead. Could you give us an example of maybe that?
So, Dave, qualified opportunity in the early stages is really based upon need first, right? And we believe that you can't go further with budget, authority to buy, timeline, and those things if need isn't established first. So, to me, a opportunity that we call 30% of the way through is where, at the very least, we've established that the prospect has functional need, whatever that may be. Maybe it's a need to improve their EDR solution, or maybe it's a requirement to look at overspending on the cloud. Those are all functional needs that we could start with. To me, a qualified opportunity, at least an early stage qualified opportunity, where there is a problem, a requirement that's been identified early on, now it's up to the seller to drive the opportunity through the rest of the funnel.
I like to refer to the early stage qualified lead, top of the funnel. So as it starts moving through the funnel, it's starting to go to higher stages, which would make it a more qualified lead. And this is where I see a lot of new sellers get in trouble, Keith. They want to tell their boss or their supervisor that they have ROI in the funnel, but a lot of times it doesn't come to fruition. And this actually doesn't only affect the new seller, but it also affects management because they have to also report to their superiors what their monthly quota looks like. Is there a way that you address the higher part of the funnel to make sure that when they do report revenue, that it's rather accurate? Or is there a certain number, if it's 80% or higher, where do you feel comfortable having your new hires say that a deal's at 80% or higher?
We actually look at it from 70% and higher, Dave. And that's where we have verbal approval. And that's a mistake that many inexperienced managers and sales executives make with their team. When they look at a 70% opportunity, many people say it's 90%. You got a verbal from the prospective client. And keep in mind that we, in this industry in particular, we use the term customer indiscriminately. A customer is somebody that's actually done business with you and has paid you money to business. A prospect is somebody who has not done business with you yet. So why call them a customer? And that's just a pet peeve of mine, Dave. But the other piece to it, David, is that 70% is verbal approval. So that could be, Dave, we like your proposal. We'd like to move forward with you. There's still a gotcha, though, there, because you still have to negotiate the T's and C's, which includes the term of the agreement if it's a managed service. And number two, to negotiate payment terms, price, and any other adjustments that have to be made. 80% of the funnel is that you've agreed to all the terms and conditions. However, you're still waiting to get the signed SLA back. At 90%, you've received the signed SLA or SOW back. And at this point, the only thing you need to do is either start to deliver services and or if it's a product opportunity, shipping the product out. And at that point, the opportunity is 100% closed. 100% means that the opportunity is now being recognized for revenue purposes.
Because we're talking about MSPs, usually these are more sophisticated solutions because they're managed solutions. How do you see new prospects or new sellers actually approaching filling the pipeline? Because sometimes those types of solutions are more sophisticated and take longer to nurture.
Focus on one pain point that the prospect may have, and only one, and come back with a solution to that pain point. As I said a few moments ago, maybe it has to do with EDR and having a better sense of who's coming into your environment, particularly if you're in a brick and mortar world, as most of the folks that we do business with are still in. And beat the crap, so to speak, out of that one pain point and get the prospective client to buy into that. Once you have established a business relationship on that one solution, come back and try to get the rest of it, whatever that might look like. Cloud environment, cybersecurity services, data protection, backup and recovery, and those kinds of things.
Keith, I have to agree with that. I've always found that if you can help a prospect solve a problem, it always leads to adding on more services. And after you help them solve that problem, you're basically looked upon as a trusted advisor. And once
Correct.
you get that title, it really makes it a lot easier for you to help them with other solutions because they open up to you. That's, really the key when it comes to pipeline, onboarding. It's being able to become a trusted advisor.
So, in wrapping this up, I think two things. One is you need to be patient. Number two, you need to set up a process that includes emphasis on prospecting, qualifying, and presenting to new prospective clients. And if you set reasonable expectations, then you should expect reasonable to good results.
Everyone, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate you coming back to the channel, and we look forward to our next podcast.